We
Hello, everyone.
we seem to have managed to do this without
There's
Chandler's
Renee.
help.
Hi, Renee.
So this is,
Good job, Kyle.
this is a big week.
This is a big week. Chandler's drowning at the lake, and we're on our own. So, I know you've been outside.
Yes.
Have you been outside, Renee?
Happy Tuesday, Renee.
Um. So speaking of the outside is kind of where I wanted to start today because it's so nice outside finally. Yes, Renee, good for you. You sat in the sun for 2 hours.
Nice.
So last week we sort of ended with this, and this week I want to start with this. I'm sorry, I have my computer propped up on something and it's not working. And that is grace moments, right?
Yes.
So where have you had grace moments in maybe in the last week? Hi, Laveda. I would say, I don't know if any of you saw this, but Pastor Sylvia was on Channel 5 News last night.
What?
Did you know that?
No.
Yes. She was speaking about Center of Grace and the free meals that they're doing from over there for curbside pickup and stuff. So
That's awesome.
I know it's probably on YouTube. You can probably pull it up from last night. I think it was at 5. I think it was Channel 5 at maybe 5 and 9. I'm not sure it made the 6 and 10 o'clock, but
Okay.
anyway, so that was a grace moment for me, I think, because I know how hard she and her volunteers are working to get people fed during the
before
time. Yeah, Steph saw her, I think.
before we move from there, what is the grant that they received?
Well, and so they received $20,000, and I think it was from the city. I don't know if it was the mayor's Christmas tree fund or what it was, but basically $20,000, and that can be used not only for food, but my understanding is, but also for like prescriptions and utilities and rent and those kinds of things, just like the need for emergency cash now. And I think that's what that grant was for. And I would need to check with Sylvia for sure to know exactly who it came from.
Gotcha. Well, that's anyway. They're doing great stuff.
They are, and as she has, I think she's putting it in the grace notes this week that if folks want to help out with that, they're looking to put desserts with their curbside meals. And so if folks want to bag up like 2 or 3 cookies in a sandwich bag that they can give with each meal, or brownies, or I don't know, pieces of cake. I don't know. I'm not good at that stuff. But if you want to drop that by, they can put those in the meals as well. But yeah, I think, you know, what I would say is that I get kind of tired of hearing national news, sometimes focusing on all of the stuff that we need to hear, but sometimes it gets to be too much. I will give credit to the local news that I think all the channels continue to try to show good things that are happening across the city during the pandemic. And so I'm glad they found the Center of Grace and that Center of Grace was out there. But also I think that the other emergency services that are working, I think local restaurants, and maybe they're not all just local, but who are supplying food for the frontline workers. I love that. And I don't know, Kyle, do you and Hope do Takeout Tuesday? Do you like order a meal on Tuesdays?
We do. We've tried to do a couple of times a week. And part of our conversation around that was we're lucky enough that we both are still getting our salaries and we're not spending other places. And so, but it's been really fun. I get to connect with a lot of local businesses, but it's been fun to now kind of make a list and try to make the rounds and support some familiar places, but also try some new ones. And yeah, it's been great.
Well, I like this. I saw this on Facebook the other day, and it said, my car is now getting 3 weeks to the gallon. And you know, and I and I decided mine is too. And so I also am terribly grateful that I'm still employed during this, and that again I'm not spending money on gas, and I'm not spending money on the other things that tend to take up time. So I don't know. It probably isn't. I don't know if it's illegal to advertise for local businesses, but the Sierra Grill, I love the Sierra Grill. It's just, it used to be a Mr. Good Sense up at Lackman and College. And like this, I think this local guy like either bought it or has rented the space out, and they fix the greatest food. They fix the best food. And so I have ordered out from there a couple of times. And then, I can't do without mi ranchito, every once in a while. So I got to have Mexican food, or I don't live. But I think trying to support local businesses is really not a bad thing, and maybe not just on Tuesdays, but I think helping to keep those businesses going is really important, because I don't want those businesses gone.
Right.
When this is all over. I saw last night on the news that Webster House is closing, and that's a place up by the Kauffman Center that you could have dinner before, at least for me, before you go to the symphony. And it's closing, and I think it was in some trouble before the pandemic came as well. But so I think if there are places that you like, yes, mi ranchito is the best. If there are places you like and you can still afford to order, to order out, and still be conservative with your funds, I think it's kind of fun just to feel like, even though you can't go to the restaurant, that at least you're getting some food from there.
There was a long conversation last week on Teresa Murray Posey's post. She was deciding where to go for Takeout Tuesday, and that's the most interaction I've seen on Facebook in weeks. There was lots of jockeying and suggestions. So if you're a friend with her and you're looking for a list, there's some great options there. And I plugged my favorite macaroni and cheese as a macaroni and cheese connoisseur at Crazy Good Eats just down the road from my house. So good barbecue, good mac and cheese. But anyway, yeah, that was a really funny conversation that we had that several people had taken place in last week.
Well, so. I will also tell you that there are folks in this congregation that cook way better than I was going to say way better than me, but since I don't cook, I'm not sure how much of a compliment that is. So I actually got some mac and cheese delivered to me on Sunday out on my driveway. Well, it was on my front porch, but the people were on my driveway. And so like I eat macaroni and cheese like candy. It's kind of like dessert. And then some other folks brought me some home, like down home farm cooking. And I pretty much thought I died and got into heaven. So I had this whole big idea that during the pandemic, I would maybe lose a lot of weight. Kyle?
Yeah.
That's not happening. That's not happening, Kyle. Because I still like chips, and I still like home cooking, and I still like macaroni and cheese.
Well, if you need somebody to dispose of that from your front porch, just call and I'll sacrifice.
Well, I tell you what, I like my neighbors across the street, but I thought that they were eyeing the sack of food that was left on my porch. And so I almost had to take them down, Kyle. I mean, they know I'm a pastor. And so most of the time I try to be pretty Jesus-like. But when it comes to food and home cooking, I'm not really that generous.
Jesus got hangry sometimes.
Jesus did get hangry sometimes.
That's biblical.
I mean, it is very biblical. Thank you. Because when the disciples were walking through the wheat field and they were picking the wheats of grain, and the Pharisees got all mad, and Jesus said, really kind of back off. I mean, that's my editorial.
Yeah.
Because the Sabbath was made for humanity, not humanity for the Sabbath. So it's okay for his disciples to eat on the Sabbath. So I think that is very biblical.
I would agree.
So do you,
While we're
Kyle, do you cook? Do you bake? Do you cook, or do you leave that to Hope, or do you partner in the cooking?
I would say we partner. I don't bake. I don't have patience for baking. I do have patience for eating baked goods. Lots of patience for that. Currently, there are, I don't know if Chad Brown is on here. Today is Chad's birthday. There are
Oh, happy birthday, Chad.
some cinnamon squares on our counter that are soon going to be delivered to him. That's what we had last year at Common Grace on his birthday. Hope made those, and there's a strawberry pie as well.
Ooh.
So Hope deals with stress by baking,
Okay.
for which I'm grateful. We both cook. I love to grill, and so especially as things get warmer, do a lot of that. So we kind of split it up.
Today would be a 10 on the calculator of grilling out, Kyle. I hope you're going to grill.
You are correct. I might imagine that might happen. So who knows?
Well, and I hope if you're delivering that you are going to wear your mask, because I heard this morning on the news that your mask should be right. It should fit up under your eyes and underneath your chin.
We had a friend that works with Hope who made us masks. And so
Really?
I wore mine for the first time last night out at Hy-Vee, running around. So anyway.
Well, and I'll say this, Kyle. Renee Holgren just said her half birthday's coming up. If you and Hope want to think about her, and I have a bandana mask.
Uh-huh.
I also have a when I used to snow ski, they called them gaiters that you would wear around your neck, and they have elastic, and so I have worn that into Hy-Vee, but it's black, and I always sort of feel like they think I'm going to rob them.
It does feel really. That's a legitimate thing that when I walk around, like, right, people walking around in masks in the grocery store or Walmart, that was weird 6 months ago and not normal, and it made me uncomfortable, and it still kind of makes me uncomfortable. I'm adjusting, but it feels
well.
scary.
I think I know, right? It's really scary, but I think it's worth it, and I think that may be a new quote unquote normal for like several months at least. Absolutely. I think maybe even when I don't want to start a controversy on here, but I think maybe even when we start coming back to church, we may ask folks to wear masks for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll preach with a mask on, but I think I'll walk in and out and around people with a mask on, a mask on. So I think that's. I saw a thing on Facebook that shows the percentages of how much you protect another person if you wear a mask and you happen to be a carrier of the virus, even if it isn't affecting you. And it's like if you're a carrier and you're wearing a mask and there's somebody else who would be susceptible to it and they're wearing a mask, the possibility of you transferring it to that person falls down to like 1.7%.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know how they measure that, but I mean, there's a huge difference when you're wearing a mask. So, and I've seen some really creative ones. So I saw a lady the other day on Facebook, and I'm going to try this because someone out there, and you know who you are, gave me some running socks with KU Jayhawks on them. Like, what? Really?
Gross. Okay,
fine, whatever. But I saw on Facebook, now it's going to become useful for me because I saw on Facebook where you can cut the toes out of a pair of running socks like that, and you cut the heel out, and then you just make a slit in the side for where your ears go, and then you put in like a napkin or a couple of paper towels, and it fits right over your ears, and it doesn't hurt your ears like rubber bands do. And it's protective. It's a protective way to go out. So, so that's a Grace moment that I found a way to use the Jayhawk running socks without really having to like put them on, and so they could be seen. So that's a good thing. I'm joking, KU fans. I'm joking. I'm very grateful for all the presents I get, mostly.
Samantha, who works at a pharmacy, says, "Wear your mask, people." So,
I
thank you,
know. Okay,
thank you,
Samantha,
Sam,
here's the
for your
deal.
work.
I'm surprised too, even when I go to Hy-Vee, that people aren't wearing masks. I don't understand why, when it's such an easy thing to do to protect other people, why not everybody why not everybody is wearing them. When you go into like Walmart or Hy-Vee or any place or a pharmacy, absolutely a pharmacy, um, I don't get that part, because you don't have to have like a medical mask. You just like to have a bandana or something, you know?
I like to think we're getting there.
Do you think so?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All
That's what
right.
I'm choosing to believe that right now. We can
Okay.
revisit it or not in 3 weeks and see.
Well, and maybe because I'm feeling a little on edge, or edgy today. And I don't want to talk a lot about this, but I think what we're seeing out in the world, frankly, is what happens to human beings when they sort of begin to reach a limit
Yeah.
of the way things are, especially if they don't like them. So I think that the tiredness of staying home and the dropping numbers are sort of lulling us into a little bit of complacency that says we need to open everything up. Now I know we've got to get things back up and running. I do. I just want us to do that in a way that is as safe as it can possibly be for as many people as it can possibly be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think there are right or wrong answers right now. I mean, I really don't. And I think what one friend said to me, Nanette, you're going to find out what this is like. You and Kyle and Michael and Cheryl, you'll find out what it's like. Whatever a leader does is going to be wrong. So when we decide to start making the transition back to worshiping in person, whatever decisions we make will be wrong for someone.
Right.
And so so in a sense, that's a microcosm in a sense, I think, of what we're seeing in macrocosm across the country, when there aren't any clear right answers, and people are tired and frustrated, and Cheryl Gerhardt is naming it for us. People are just morons. There's always that. And thank you, Cheryl, for that. But I think, we get tired and frustrated, and we decide, well, the reality isn't the way, the reality really isn't the way it is. So we want to just make it different. And I think people have a right to share that perspective, but when it endangers other people is really the issue.
Right.
And so I think what I would just say to those who are watching today and part of this conversation, just know that where we are as a church, we are not going to start having in-person worship. We just are not. And I'm guessing that will be the case for at least another month. That doesn't mean we won't start making transitional steps. And we're not sure what that will look like. But we are not going to just throw open our doors,
right,
and say, everybody come on in. Because as Governor Kelly has pointed out, there have been the illustration of 4 different hotspots that have popped up around the state of Kansas from churches meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be I don't want to be one of those statistics. So at the same time, I also know that we need to find a way to do healthy transitions.
Right.
But I think masks are a minimal thing to ask people to do in a public setting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you've hit on something that's really important, that is a good reflection, again, on the macro, but then even for individuals is at what point do we run out of patience for the things that are really difficult for us? And even the people who are most staunchly stay at home, very protective of that, right, also reach a limit of where they kind of hit a frustration with that. It doesn't mean the behavior changes, but
right.
There's a point where we come to kind of the end of that. And I think that's one of the things that this season is inviting us to consider for ourselves, and again, for a church, for a state, for a nation. What are the things that what is the timeline that we have that we're willing to put up with something until we're not? And what does that look like then? And what are the ramifications of that in our interpersonal relationships,
Right.
in our local businesses and things like, it just, I think this is one of the maybe gut checks that comes for us in this season of really understanding more about who we are individually and kind of more sociologically. But that's
Right.
something that I've been thinking a lot about. And they point to other nations who experienced the last SARS outbreak and how they seem to have a larger capacity for the inconvenience of this because they've seen the ramifications of it. And
Right.
and again, it just I think everybody hits that limit, and then there are different ways that we deal with that, in positive ways and negative ways, and that's one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, mostly for myself. When
Right.
I got to the end of my okay, this isn't fun anymore. What kind of happened in the way Hope and I talked to each other? What happened in my work stuff? And so anyway, those are all things that I've been spending a lot of time trying to think about.
And I think the question, because I think you're right. I think it's a universal human part of the human condition that we all reach, right, a limit. The question is that at that point, then do we react or do we respond?
Yeah.
So I reached that point where I don't want to be afraid anymore, or I don't want to feel threatened anymore. I don't want to feel like everything's dangerous anymore. Does that mean I just suddenly decide, so it doesn't matter, I'm just going to go out and do what I want to do and go where I want to go and be who I want to be? Or does it mean I take a look at that and say, right, patience is not one of my strongest virtues.
Mm-hmm.
And so given that I know that about myself, which is what you're talking about, how do we reflect on who we are? Given that I know that about myself, then I say, so how best do I respond, knowing that I'm not a particularly patient person? How do I best respond to the situation that still is dangerous? And I still see frontline folks in pharmacies and nurses and doctors,
right,
who are, who still lack personal protective gear, who are mourning the loss of their colleagues because they're working on the front lines, and choose not to ignore that.
Yeah.
I don't want to ignore the fact that people are losing their lives on the front lines. And so does that help me take a deep breath and say, well, I'm not a patient person. I respect those people so much that are willing to stand and walk beside our loved ones who are suffering, that even if it would be better for me personally, if I could just go out and do what I want to do, I'm not going to do that because I want to respect their position and their leadership and their willingness to stand sort of in the gap,
right,
between the healthy and the really, really sick.
Yeah.
And the numbers are going down, and we are going to come back, and we are going to make that transition. It's just that we have to make it in a, especially as people of faith, we have to make it in a self-sacrificial way. So if I have to sacrifice not getting to see my congregation for another month, then okay. Do I like that? No, because I want to see people. But it's a small sacrifice to make. And I think as a person of faith, Jesus is kind of big on putting another person ahead of ourselves. So anyway, Kyle, you and I talked about maybe wanting our folks to think about, because we're thinking about it. So if we are, they need to as well, right?
Right.
But thinking about what are the good things that we're currently doing because we're in shelter at home pandemic that we may want to continue after we're no longer sheltering at home and the pandemic is no longer that which is kind of defining us? I think you articulated it better, but can you pose that
Yeah,
question?
yeah. So all of us have, in the gut check of when we run out of frustration, in the rearranging of our life, there are things individually and larger that we're doing differently, and some of those things will stay with us. And some of those things should stay with us. We should be learning things about ourselves, about each other in this season that should make us live differently on the other side of this. And so, I mean, like, I'll point to an example that we've already talked about. I don't remember how we got on this tangent, but making that list of local restaurants and local businesses and being intentional about supporting them and kind of having that in mind when you decide to go out. That's a positive thing that I've sort of thought about before, but I never sat down and made a list of it and said, hey, we've talked about going to that place. We really should, because I think supporting the community around us, I think that's really, really important. And this has given me time to prioritize that. And maybe it's in work-life balance, but I think what we wanted to encourage folks to do over the next week, and we'll revisit this next week in our chat on Tuesday afternoon, is to think about maybe something personally in your own life, in your own household, that will be different, that you hope to retain on the other side of this. And then perhaps professionally or at church, something that you hope to see different, that's positively impacted by this season that we find ourselves in. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of different directions that could go, but that's some of what we want to talk about next week. Is there anything that comes to mind off the top of your head, Nanette, for that?
Well, yeah, I think I've been thinking, a lot about worship, and while doing all this filming, as not a very good tech person, it just takes a long time. The part about it that I like is being able to be in different places to film. And so there's a piece of me that thinks when we come back to worship, I want to be able to be that creative again. And maybe that means that at the beginning of of worship, there's a 30-second or a 60-second, maybe welcoming words is filmed out at the Labyrinth, or maybe it's filmed up in the youth room, or maybe it's different places that most of us don't get around to going to on Sunday morning, but that are a part of our church and that are a part of who we are as a community. And is that something we want to continue? Miko says having small groups based on common interests would be great. I think that's excellent.
Yeah.
I think anything that comes out of this that helps us connect to each other and helps us connect to who we are as a community of faith, who we are as a local community, and I think even who we are related to the natural world.
Yeah.
I mean, especially as spring is coming, right? Being able to be outside and see blooming trees. I mean, that was a piece of why I wanted to be in that one particular room on the second floor or third floor last week for my sermon, was I love that blooming tree right outside the window.
Yes.
And I could certainly see it better than you could through the camera I was using to film. But I think being connected to our natural environment may be a positive thing that comes out of this, because when you feel so locked into your house, you can go out and take a walk. There have been more people in my neighborhood who've been out and about and social distance saying hi, right? And there have been more folks down on the little basketball court that's down, the basketball pad that's down below my house, dads and sons and moms and daughters, and those are pieces that I hope we don't lose either. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would challenge our listeners as well to think about the things in, as you've just said, the things in your own life that you want to keep, right? Maybe a better pace of life, maybe a broader perspective, maybe growing a new sense of patience. But what's effective in the church that you like, that we've been doing? How can we keep small groups going? Even when we can meet in person, maybe we meet in person and Zoom for those who can't come in person.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of things that could come out of this that might help us connect together more before we can just go full bore, right? Before we can all just come back together and breathe on each other and not have to worry about it. Because I think that's going to be quite a long while.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're at the end of our time. So we'll be back next Tuesday at 3, but also in worship on Sunday mornings. And Michael will be doing his devotion tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 6. So make sure you tune into that. And what else, Kyle, do we have going on?
Thursday, I'll do a Zoom conversation. There'll be info, and you can email me for the link or send a direct message through the Common Grace Facebook page, and I'll get that to you. That's Thursday from 4 to 5:30. And that's a virtual coffee talk. It's what fuels your pastor, folks. All your pastors. Anyway, so lots going on. And then, of course, worship this weekend and the continued stuff happening at Center of Grace. Next Gen Ministries has a ton of things happening. So it's
and here's my prescription. Here's my Kyle. Here's my prescription, because I'm a doctor.
That's right.
I'm a doctor. Okay. Ooh, that looks scary. Go outside today. Grill out for supper, or make a sandwich and go out and sit on your deck, sit on your patio, sit on your front porch and yell at your neighbors. Positive things, of course. Invite them to Grace, because you don't even have to take the risk of coming to church with them. They can watch on their TV or
great.
On their computer screen or whatever. But go outside today. It's too lovely not to go outside. I'm going to actually leave early and go outside, because I don't want to miss this beautiful day. So, Kyle, thank you for doing the tech.
Absolutely. Good to see everyone. Hero. Looking forward to next week.
See you later. Bye-bye.